So, good evening, everyone. So, I'm Sadie, Timespan's director, and I'm joined with our digital heritage curator, Jacquie.
Hi.
The faceless crowd, thank you very much for joining us on what's quite a weird deal of an exhibition opening launch. So, before starting, we've got a list of thank yous because we've had a lot of help transitioning our program online. So first to the Open Virtual World team at St Andrews, who've collaborated with Jacquie to produce very beautiful and insightful virtual reconstruction models. Harry at An Endless Supply, who did all the web architecture and answered to our sort of 3 million revision requests. And Laurie, who's our newest Timespan gang member and designer, who's really given us a lot of good style. And of course to Jacquie, because I've always felt the luckiest to be able to work with an endlessly curious mind. And Real Rights has just sort of established that. And it's just a real privilege to learn so much from you. So a little bit about this evening. So I'll start with a sort of wide angle view of Timespan's approach to history and how that ties into our commitment to demodernize the cultural institution. And then Jacquie will mine into the sort of taxonomy of the exhibition and discuss digital heritage as a generative tool, which has the potential to democratize cultural production. And then we'll both take you on a tour of the show. Okay, so Western modernity is characterized as a political, economic, and knowledge regime and a structure of power, created and controlled by great European men informed by Christian theology. Modernity and coloniality are inextricably linked and follow the racialized logic of capital and exploitation. So this model of history favors a singular narrative and sort of these grand progressive trajectories and dominant knowledge systems, which are unable to represent a global world of traditions and differences. The brand of history that we're pursuing at Timespan gives a multiplicity of readings and opposes a monoculture of knowledge based on Western thinking. And the multiplicity of readings. So that's not the same as pluralism, because pluralism sort of gives a false sense of that neutrality, where there's apparently two legitimate positions and two sides of the story. And that sort of also discounts power structures. So at Timespan, we question why knowledge is produced and by who, what power structures are involved, what marginalized histories are being excluded and suppressed. So following Benjamin's thesis, history needs to be activated to clarify and violently clash with the present for revolutionary future potentials. So Real Rights actually was pre-COVID was intended to be an in real life gallery show. And as we've worked on it online, we very much, I think Jacquie agrees, that we very much think that the digital exhibition is actually the format that it should be in, and it's not a substitute for the real thing. Jacquie?
Yes, it really translated well to the web-based exhibition. Just to say hello to everybody, and it's great to be here and to eventually launch our new exhibition. And it's been a great pleasure and privilege to work on it, and it puts me back to where I'm most happiest, and that's doing research and looking into all these really fascinating themes that are really important to where we live today. So just a little bit about Real Rights, and then I'm going to tell you a little bit about how we've presented all these themes in this exhibition. So Real Rights is a critical reflection on the past strategies of governance of land, coast, river and sea through its use, ownership, and exploitation of Earth's resources. It provides an overview of the landholding systems that were adopted in the parish of Kildonan in the past at three major periods of change and societal disruption. So we begin with the expansion of regional agricultural provinces in the later Iron Age to the part feudal landlord tenancies of the early 19th century at the time of the Highland clearances. And then the implementation of the crofting plantation system and the later land agitations of the late 19th century. And also we refer to the selling of the estates at the beginning of the 20th century. We reflect on the division of labour for land and sea-based economies and the complex legislation that often stifled progressive and sustainable forward-looking vision for the North. We consider our history through the intersection of colonialism and climate change to investigate land ownership and management and the fishing and leisure industries to understand how these legacies reverberate in our present conjuncture. Real rights moves between the molecular and the macro, including the technical modifications of soil and the architecture of Scots law. We really hope that Real Rights provides a platform for discussing current land, water, and environmental issues that affect us all. So that does sound kind of to me, it's really interesting areas of discussion, but how have we presented that in our exhibition? Well, the online exhibition was designed to be extremely interactive, intuitive, and explorative. And we hope that people will enjoy browsing through the different sections, finding items of interest to read, think about, and discuss further. There's 9 sections, which we'll come to in a minute when I hand back to Sadie, that we'll go through, that introduce the Real Rights themes and topics. And we're delighted to share with you and the rest of the world that are, for the first time, our new digital reconstruction models of Kildonan and Helmsdale in the past. And this work was done in partnership with the Open Virtual World team at the University of St Andrews. Timespan and St Andrews are 2 of 9 international partners that form the Digital Heritage Project, CINE, See the Past, Imagine the Future. The models show Kildonan in the Iron Age and at the time of the Highland clearances in 1813, and the historic fishing village of Helmsdale at the height of the herring boom in 1890. We've also got some 3D objects and other collections with narratives. So you won't be bored with this exhibition. It's got some really lovely eye-popping graphics and accessible design, which will make it intuitive. And I think the backdrops will really be of interest to everybody who looks at it. So that's just a little bit about the exhibition. I'm just going to hand back to Sadie.
I'm handing right back back to you because you're introducing the Helmsdale botanical specimens.
Right, okay, so I think what we'll do, this is our first interactivity with the exhibition. So we're going to go into section 2, as you can see up there. So if we click into it, as we've just done here, it's brought up these 3 plant specimens. So this particular section, it looks at 3 specimens from the parish of Kildonan. And it provides a visual introduction to 3 different plants that have been important to the economy and ecology of the area. As land management and land uses changed, so did the importance of these plants. The landowners were usually the orchestrators of change, which led to the end of the line for some plants and an experimental laboratory for other improved specimens. So the first one we're going to look at is the first one in the row of 3. So I think we're going to click into it. there we go. So this is a specimen of, this one here is an early strain of barley called Bear barley, or 6-row Bear barley, Hordeum vulgar in the Gaelic. And this was a pre-improved crop specimen, and it was grown in the Strath of Kildonan from the times of the Iron Age onward. And the strain developed into, I think, 4-row barley and 2-row barley, and this was still being grown at the time of the Highland clearances. And it was really the first crop that was being farmed by settled communities in the Strath of Kildonan. It was extremely important as a subsistence crop, and even the dried grain in the Kildonan was used to make illicit whiskey in the hills, in the hidden illicit stills that were on the small streams. And here's a lovely quote expressing what the land holding or the land use system was like for those subsistence farmers in pre-clearances time, as extracted from the Loth statistical account in 1793. And it reads, "The soil is generally good, and the arable part of it in constant culture, producing a crop every year, as far back is the memory of the old men or even their fathers. All the tacksmen and tenants have one half of their arable land in Bear barley, and the other half in oats and pease. The bare land gets 2 furrows and is manured, but that for the oats and peas gets only 1 furrow without manure." It just gives a little insight into the way that the crops were grown. And when we come to 1814, we have another account of Bear barley, and this is an extract for the report of the Agriculture of Scotland in 1814. And it says, "Bear barley is perhaps less cultivated now than formerly, as the quality used as bread corn has been much diminished, whilst the immense taxation which is laid upon it in malting, brewing and distillation has controlled to depress its market value." And sadly, this is one of the crops that stopped being grown as an arable crop in Kildonan during the improvements at the time of the Highland clearances. So certainly all these plants have an important story and history to tell in terms of the real rights themes. And I think we're back over to Sadie now.
Thanks, Jacquie. Ian, can we go into the next section, please? Yeah, so soils and land ownership. So we start by looking at the colonial foundations of property law and land ownership. And actually, we should have taken it back earlier to the enclosures, because that was the sort of apparatus that they then implanted in the colonies. And we bring it down to Scotland and how Scotland's very archaic laws are still relatively untouched for I don't know how many hundreds of years, and then bring it then back down to locally to Sutherland to ask the question why the sort of feudal land system has been maintained, and we're a parish of essentially sort of private estates. The soil part is important because we wanted to talk about how the manipulation of soil has been used as a tool of environmental warfare, both here and Helmsdale at the time of the clearances, and then also in the colonies, which it was used as sort of a tool of control. Ian, can you click through the slideshow just so we can see what we've got? These are quite so we're sort of telling this the history of land ownership, and social and political history, but also through Scots law and what legislation governs us now, and to think about the possibilities of that changing. Ian, if you stop on this one, Jacquie can talk a little more about it.
Thank you, Sadie. Yes. So we put this map in. I came across this map while doing the research in working with St Andrews doing our digital work, and I came across because I was interested in all the different data that's available that we could use to do the reconstructions. And one of the most important parts of that data, I thought, well, I want to know what the soil is, what type of soil is there in Kildonan, and what was that soil being used for, and how was it being manipulated, and how did it manipulate the people who lived there. So this is a map similar to the land capability maps that you can find that have been produced. But this one in particular shows you the soil types within the area that really is the area that we're looking at with this exhibition, which is down on the coast, up the river, into the hills, and to the peatlands above. And there's different soil types represented by the different colours on this map. So it's kind of like we're really getting down to the, looking at it from that level in the soil. So the type of soil that is present can influence what can grow, who can live there, and more importantly, how much it's worth. The upper hill slopes, they were covered in peaty soils, and they still are, and they were not attractive places to live even back in the Iron Age, and so the encroaching peat that was present at that time forced communities to move further downhill. So we have evidence from roundhouse excavation. So even going back to the Iron Age, there were some excavations that took place in Kildonan in the 1960s by Horace Fairhurst. And by reading his reports, we can glean that he found, when he dug down to the level of the floors inside the roundhouses at Kilfedder, which is just out of shot of this map, he found that there was a layer of peat lying on top of the floors of the roundhouse. And obviously that had accumulated over a long time. But to him, it made him aware that the climate, even in the Iron Age, was a changing climate. And it actually had this is what made such a change to where people were living, and this could be noted in the soil record. It's not only today that climate change was important, as we can see from that peat record, but the changes that we talk about in the Iron Age are changes that took place literally over thousands of years. But this is not true for what we can say today about the current climate crisis, where it's happening at a much accelerated pace than it was back then. So there's lots of things we can learn about soil, but it's really interesting to find out what soil types are there and how they've been exploited or how they have changed in the past. And it will help us understand the nature of that today as well. Thank you. And I think that's back to Sadie. I think we're just finished with that one. Thank you very much, Ian.
Okay, so Guyanese botanical specimens. So why Guyanese? So the Highlands and Sutherland particularly, the sort of wealth and growth benefited from the exploitation of Guyanese peoples and the extraction of the resources. And they were a British colony. So bioprospecting was a fundamental part of European colonial expansion, and indigenous knowledges were appropriated and then commodified. And of course, the genesis of the Latin botanical system is, I can't pronounce his name, linear taxonomy, which was a system, of course, that was implanted in order to universalize, to order, and to rationalize the natural world in line with Western thinking. So Jacquie's done really interesting research on herbal practices of the indigenous populations in Guyana. Um, and there are similarities, am I right in saying that, with sort of ancient Highland remedies and practices? So choose a
Yeah.
spec, Jacquie.
Yeah, thank you, Sadie. So what we'll do, I mean, yeah, so when I was doing the research for these specimens, um, the first thing that came to my mind was, gosh, you know, there's such similarities between the research I found out about the plant and herbal and the local traditions in Guyana, and the same type of local traditions that can be found in the Highlands. Um, and we know that this you know, this is where people have been getting their remedies for thousands of years. This is where we get our remedies today. So we were really interested to find out how some of these specimens have been used in Guyana in terms of local remedies. So we're going to, yeah, so this one here uh, is Achiotis annua. And so this plant here was used in the treatment of coughs and colds in northwest Guyana. And this is a specimen that's held in the Royal Botanical Garden, Edinburgh Herbarium collection. They've got a fantastic collection. And when we look at what's happening in the world today with the current pandemic, it is plants like Achiotis and indeed some plants from Guyana that are being looked at to see if they merit any antiviral responses to COVID-19. So it's really interesting when we look at some plants and the connections that they have and how in fact they are very relevant to major situations that we are going through today. We hope to look into this part of our research in much more detail. We're interested in identifying indigenous peoples from Guyana that actually had all this knowledge and may have shared it as well. So we have a lot more exciting research into these plants and their uses and the connections. We also came up with another connection between the Highlands and Guyana, which was basket making industries as well. So we think that there's, and pottery connections as well. So we've got so many things that we need to compare as well. It's going to be very exciting.
Yeah,
So yeah, so that's our specimen.
Oh, sorry, Jacquie. No, we should. I was just saying we should give a shout out to David Alston, who has done the
Absolutely.
the fundamental research in the Highlands role in empire. And certainly the Highlands role in empire is a research thread that we're taking forward.
Indeed, and some of these specimens, even in, you know, in colonial times, these specimens, it was the indigenous and the, you know, people that had all this knowledge, and it was such a rich stream of knowledge, and it's great to see that a lot of this knowledge has been preserved, and I think that's really important that we have a similar sort of response to the knowledge of the Highland plant remedies as well. So I think we're going to be finished with that section, Ian, and I'm going to hand over to Sadie, who's going to introduce extraction and exploitation.
Yeah, so the Highlands hasn't escaped from capitalist modernism. And it feels especially magnified. So it still sort of follows the developmental logic of neocolonialism, and it continues its language of sort of growth, extraction, exploitation, and profit accumulation. Um, so through these objects, we're telling the sort of the industrialization of the Highlands through agriculture and different energy schemes for nuclear, oil, and renewables. Um, and and Ian, if you could click through, please. And as well as just to the final one. So as well as the sort of this neocolonial logic of extraction and exploitation, so that also included the exploitation of the Guyanese people. And Jacquie's going to, next one, sorry, Ian. And Jacquie's going to discuss this through the agricultural systems which were enforced here at the time of the clearances and then transplanted almost identically into the plantations in the colony.
Yes, so obviously learning more about the connections between the Highlands and the you know the slave trade itself, and those connections are far and wide and far, and they need to be researched. We came across this map, and so this map is part of the colony of Demerara, and it is part of the it's actually represents quite a few of the plantations from Mahiaka Creek to Plantation Friendship, and it was produced in 1823 by Joshua Bryant, and it can be found in the John Carter Brown Library collection. But what is interesting, what we took from this map, well, firstly, the map, so the map, it was actually made to depict an account of an insurrection of the slaves in the colony of Demerara, which broke out in 18th of August, 1823. And quite a lot of the iconography is based around that episode. But what's actually interesting about the map when I first saw it is when you look at it, you see all these strip fields or land divisions in from the coast inland in a very thin and narrow strip of land dividing between the different plots of land. And so we look at this and it bears quite a lot of similarities to some of the Scottish estate maps of around the same period, this being 1823. And the map that we have at the start of our Real Rights exhibition, if you compare it to that map of 1817, you will see the same system of layout of land in these strip fields. And the strip fields that you find in the map of 1817 from Helmsdale shows the crofting allotments down at the coast when the people from Kildonan, where they had been farming, they had been removed to the coast and they were allocated strips or lots of land called crofts. And it does bear a similarity to that land layout. And doing further research, we found that this plantation system, this area, this way of dividing the land, is something that was experimented in Scotland many years earlier. And it's this system that has been used in many different ways to divide and to control landholding systems. So we see the plantations have this system, we see the crofting allotments have this system, and in some instances we've seen that when people emigrated that this system was applied as well. So the plantation system that we see on this map, certainly there are links, and it was developed here, and this system was transported over to the colonies quite early on as well. So it's something that we would like to explore much further as well.
Yeah, Jacquie, and the sort of language around it and the way to sort of sell it is all about, it's very from the Enlightenment, so it's all about sort of civilizing and improvements and so forth.
That's right. It's all about control and ownership, and it also allows you to control how much value is within each of the strips of land. And it comes down to what you're growing on it, what the land type is, who is living there. So these are very much manipulative systems for groupings of people that are employed to do some kind of land use on these strips of land. So it's certainly something we need to explore much further. So I think we'll leave that one there. Ian, thank you very much. And we're going to have a look at now trade and migration. So we're going to move into this as well. So this is another big topic. You can't really look at the exhibition of real rights without looking into trade and migration. And I'd just like to acknowledge my colleague and friend, archaeologist Kathy Dagg, who did these wonderful illustrations of pottery sherds that were found in Kildonan and at Helmsdale in the past. So all these different potteries are from different periods, but the one that we're going to look at, Ian, if we could just have a little slideshow, if you don't mind. We'll start at the beginning. Yeah, so this is an Iron Age potsherd that was found in Dalharn in the Strath of Kildonan, and we'll just move on and we'll just stop there. So this is an archaeological illustration of a piece of mockaware, and there's a story to tell around even a sherd of pottery that comes from an excavation in Kildonan. So this was found in the early, this dates to the early 19th century. It was retrieved in 2013 when Timespan and the Orkney College conducted an archaeological investigation of a pre-clearances longhouse at Kyan Township in the Strath of Kildonan. It had been inhabited up until the time of the clearances, and we know it was unoccupied by 1825. The excavation revealed many interesting objects, including a significant and diverse pottery assemblage. These discoveries greatly added to the limited body of knowledge about the material culture of these upland subsistence farming communities in the east of Sutherland. An unusual find was this piece of mockaware, and it was what we found and this was actually made in the Staffordshire potteries in England, and it was decorated with an unusual frond-like or seaweed pattern, as you can see on the screen. But it was created through a chemical process using tobacco and iron oxide. So the trade in pottery from the south using tobacco from the West Indies is an example of the far-reaching impact of the colonial trade, even in the far north of Scotland. Even as indirect a link as it is, it links the Highlands and that colonial connection at that time. So the pottery in itself really, it really tells about that far-reaching trade and migration, and certainly this is something that you can explore more if you come onto the website as well. So I think we're going to leave that one there, Ian. Thank you very much. And I think we're going to have a little look into section 7, how to digitize the past. So maybe this is something, so this section, we've still got a little bit to do in this section, but maybe we can have a look at number 2. So this is just a screenshot we took from making our Iron Age roundhouse. So in the exhibition, we've got 3 spots that you will come to, and each of them represents our digital models. We'll talk about them more in a minute. But I was responsible for supplying information to the digital modeler. That was Sarah Kennedy, who was responsible for actually making the models. And a big hello to Sarah. She couldn't join us tonight, but I hope you're watching. And so we were looking at all aspects of roundhouse construction. And one of the things that we struggled with was the roof structure, because that is part of the roundhouse that doesn't exist. It's not, you don't usually find that part in any of the excavations. So this is part of the roundhouse that we built up and we knocked down, and we built up and we knocked down and we had different heights and elevations, and we tried to make it a realistic as we could. So we did quite a lot of research in trying to ensure that we represented a real roof on a roundhouse that would stand the test of time. So it was quite a difficult process, and we had to have some compromises. So we'll maybe come out of that one, Ian.
Yeah, so Jacquie, I'm conscious that we're talking far
Yeah.
too much, of course.
Yeah.
So maybe
We might move on a bit.
Yeah. So we'll just give a brief overview of the Highlands leisures and industry, and I think just allow people to explore at their own pace.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's looking at how the mythologization of the Highlands is, empty, romanticized landscapes and, the mighty stag, and how this has come through economic comparatives, the tourist industry, and also Scottish literature as well. So we look at how the estates came about and the sort of major shifts in their development, including the sales pre-World War One. And we also look at the tourist and the fishing industries as well, and sort of provide a bit of a sort of class and gender analysis of that. Right, and I think we just go, I think we go back.
Yeah.
So there's tons and tons of stuff.
There's lots.
Dense with information. And sort of each object has a description and then a further sort of meta-narrative to it as well. So there's tons for everyone to explore. It's now live online. And it's going to be evolving. So we're going to be adding bits to it as well throughout the show. We've got a really, really brilliant program of events which will sort of activate these topics as well. So Jacquie, if you could say 2 lines about the Helmsdale Fishing Village, 1890, then I think maybe we go into...
We should get on with that, absolutely. I've been waiting a long time to reveal this model, and I'm sure the St Andrew team has as well. Are we going to look at the model in the exhibition, Ian?
Yeah, so just so people know they can access...
Yeah, so if you go down the screen, you'll come to the spot which will you can, if you hover over it. So this is...
So it's up, Ian, it's in the...
Yeah. So what you're going to see is a reconstruction, a digital reconstruction of the historic fishing village of Helmsdale as it looked at the height of the herring boom in 1890. So I think we'll not see any more than that. I think we should just go ahead and play it. Don't think we're hearing anything. I don't think we're getting any sound.
So this is the castle, is it, Jacquie?
Yeah, so this is a castle at Helmsdale that was demolished in 1970. And wow. Here we are. We're just going up some of the castle walls here, and you can see one of the fireplaces. It's like a hanging fireplace. And actually the lintel of the castle was the only thing that survived. So we're kind of coming over now the land where the castle is located, getting a really nice view looking out onto the coast, and you can actually see some of the fishing boats out to sea fishing. So there's the castle, and we've got an area of grazing land for the the local crofters. There's some cows there grazing. And that land today is the same land where the famous Helmsdale Highland Games takes place.
Right. I've been to that.
Yeah, it's a great experience. I look forward to that again. And as you come up to, so this is Helmsdale. So we're looking down, we're looking on Helmsdale, and this is a northerly view that we're looking at onto the village of Helmsdale. And you can see that there's a bridge, that's the old Telford Bridge, and a very grid-like layout of the streets. So the streets were deliberately in this new improved grid layout. The first building you can see there with the red roofs, that's actually that's Time Span. It was an old fish curing yard.
Mm-hmm.
And all along Shore Street, you can see the areas where about a dozen curing yards were built in the early to mid 19th century.
It would have been a very busy area, would it?
A very busy area. At the height of the fishing industry, there would have been about, they'd say about 500 boats cram-packed into Helmsdale, you know, in the 1840s to the 1860s time.
Wow.
And these boats would have been the Fifey boat by 1890 with these big, massive red sails. So here we are coming along. This is the street frontage now. So this is along Shore Street, and we're looking onto the buildings. This is the very fronts of the curing yards. So these would have been the offices or the curers' accommodation that we're looking at here. Yeah. And as we move along, and here we have the open air gutting of the herring. So here are the herring gutting girls. Okay. Worked in teams of 3. And in the early days,
hard work. Yeah.
Oh, it was absolutely, it was tireless. And so this is the open air curing of the herring, which was gutting, salting and packing into barrels. And you can see the very sharp knives that the girls are using there. Oh, I think we've just come out of it. Yeah, that's okay. And so this view here is amazing because this really shows you all that barrels of herring that's has laid up on the quayside ready to be exported. In the early days of the herring fishing industry at Helmsdale, the export trade, there was a domestic trade, there was also a trade to Ireland. But there was also trade along the Caledonian Canal to ports like Cork in Ireland, and a lot of that herring was repackaged. And we have records that herring that actually came from Helmsdale being repackaged in the Irish ports, and it is being sent to the West Indies. And the reason that herring was sent to the West Indies because it was a very cheap form of nutritional food, and the plantation owners used it to feed their slaves. So it's a direct link that the early fishing industry, not just at Helmsdale, but was very much part of the colonial history and the slave trade. All these nets that you can see here are drying, so they're drying on these stakes. And again, that's a look at the harbour mouth with all the Fifies with their sails up, meaning that these ones are heading out for their next day's catch.
There was regulation about the net size, was there?
There was. The net size had to be an inch from each corner to each corner, a kind of square diamond shape. And anything under or over an inch for catching herring was deemed that was not part of the regulation, and you could be prosecuted for having nets of different sizes, but also for double bagging nets, having one net behind the other, preventing the fish from escaping. So here we're coming to an old curing yard right next to the Telford Bridge, and it's exciting because this is the building that I work in. So this is the Time Span building as it was in the 1840s and 50s. And so Time Span, we have this amazing history that our museum was actually one of the old curing yards at Helmsdale. And so this is quite a low building that we can see here. And at the back of Timespan, we still have the two-story building at the back of Timespan, which probably provided accommodation for the herring gutting girls at the time when it was the herring season, and all these girls would travel to Helmsdale to gut the fish, and they needed places to stay. So all these buildings would have been utilised for accommodation. I think we might be heading into the building. I'm not sure.
Jackie and Ian, I just thought, because the film is buffering a little, it's very jolty.
Yeah.
I wonder if you wanted to do a live tour and if that would work.
Yeah, well, could we, yeah, let's transfer to a live view, because I think what would be really nice if we could take people into the curing yard, so we could try that and see if that would work.
So
Do you want to say a little about the models that we have available in the online exhibition?
Yeah, so in the online exhibition, so we have, so we've got 3 different periods, because that's what our themes in Real Rights covers. So we wanted to represent Kildonan, which is our cine case study area. So we wanted to represent it in the Iron Age, great changes in agriculture, technology with the coming of iron, and lots of other changes that are relevant to some of, and the climate as well. So we've got a farming settlement with roundhouses, with open field systems, and where you can explore. So that's actually on the Real Rights exhibition. And after this live launch, you can go there and explore it for yourselves. And the second one, what we have, the second model that will be coming very shortly and should be on next week, is Kildonan, slightly lower down the hill from the Iron Age settlement, but on the same hillside with these multi-period sites appearing in the same landscape. So slightly lower down, we have the clearances settlement of Caen. And we represented all the longhouses, the outbuildings. We've even got corn, where the corn and the bear was dried. We've also got an illicit still, because during our excavation, we also found pieces of an illicit still as well. So with all this information, archaeological, archival, theoretical, we've put together this this settlement at the time of the Highland clearances at Caen. And as you saw, even actually finding some of those objects, we've been able to put them back into the model. So hopefully when you're exploring the models, you'll actually see some of the objects that have come from our own museum collection, which I think is a pretty wonderful way of showing the context of an object. And then the model that you've seen just now is our herring gutting girls and the fishing village at Helmsdale. So yeah, you've got lots to explore. And I know there's a few technical hitches with being live, but once you go onto the website, you'll be able to explore all this in your own time. And so Ian, do we have anything? Well, maybe we could take a few. Well, I'll tell you what, maybe we could ask Alan. So Alan leads the Open Virtual World teams at St Andrews. And Alan, so I just want to ask you, what was your kind of role in the Cine project? And maybe you could tell us a little bit about how these models are reconstructed.
Okay, thanks a lot for that, Jackie. The Cine project, it's all, or a large part of it is about representing the past and doing it in a way that is visual. I mean, I think the part of the point about the models is that, I don't know, Jackie, you spend quite a lot of time, don't you, with
Yeah, you do.
You know, doing the research and finding out, you know, what happened and who was there and what they looked like, and putting it all into context. And I think that, you know, one of the great things about making one of these models about it is it kind of makes all of that research that you've done really accessible to people,
Yeah.
isn't it? It's kind of like a really quick knowledge transfer thing. And I think that that's one of the things that we try to do with the digital modeling, is to kind of capture that knowledge that you it's not easy to come by, is it? I mean,
do you find, because kind of working in archaeology and working in museums, we gather so much information, we've got such a vast resource, but a lot of the time, I mean, we have objects, we can't put every object on display, so we've got a storeroom like many other museums where quite a lot of our objects are housed when they're being preserved. And also in archaeology, once we've dug up a site, we write our reports, and we've got bags of objects and things like that. And it's kind of like, you know, all that information is there, and we need to take it to the next stage. But through the work that we've done with yourselves and the digital reconstruction work, it's like we can actually take all that information, and we've got another outlet to actually represent what these sites look like, not just by guessing it, but actually using all this wealth of information we have to our hands. And that's what's exciting, and we can share that with others.
Sorry, Jacquie, can you say a little more about how the digital process has impacted on your archaeological research and the methods of archaeological research?
Yes, so actually making the models, I mean, the roundhouse model that we made, and again, please have a look at that on the website. The interesting thing about that was we started from scratch. So the process was that we had to go up to Kildonan and Kine, and this is a real roundhouse that is the footings of a roundhouse, a hut circle with stones on the ground. So we had to go up there and actually survey the roundhouse. And once we got the ground plan of the roundhouse, so this was a community engagement project. So there was a group of us up there, you know, surveying it. We passed that information to the model maker, who was Sarah, and she was able to translate that information into the infrastructure of the virtual world model software. And so we could get the right ground plan and also the right measurements. And then we also used the OS, was it the OS contour data, Alan, for the landscapes?
Yeah, that's right. So the whole models are built upon data that comes from lots of different sources. You know, like archaeological excavations, from OS data, and from surveys, from historical sources. But once it's in a model, one of the great things about it is that there are so many different sorts of media that you can present the models in. I mean, we've got spherical video, photographs. We've got video. There's 3D models. There's galleries of 3D artifacts. So it's such a good and an interactive thing.
But the thing about the roundhouse was that we only had a certain amount of evidence, and most of that evidence was not there because the roundhouse isn't there anymore. It's an archaeological site. So what we've done through the Cine project is that we've actually developed ways of representing walls from the Iron Age and roofs of the Iron Age and internal structures, because these all had to be made from scratch. One of the issues we had is that nothing from archaeological sites, if you go back to the pre-improvement times in Sutherland, nothing is straight lined. Everything is very higgledy-piggledy. Your walls aren't straight, and they're quite amorphous, so they're quite thick and rounded. So it was trying to get a round circle into a square hole. It was quite difficult, but I think through the project we've actually developed very successful ways of representing archaeological features, not just from the Iron Age, but from other periods in time. And we hope that all this work is going to be useful for other museums doing digital development in the future. So we've produced a lot of case study information that we hope will be useful in that.
That's great.
I think we're coming to an end.
Yes, but
So Ian,
let's see, Ian.
Alan, stop shouting. So I think we're coming to an end of this event, Jacquie, and that maybe we should have a separate event for the village model.
Yeah.
We'll the film, and then Yeah, so we can premiere the film at a later date, and because there is again so much information.
Yeah, we'll definitely. So here we are. We're walking along Shore Street, which is great. There's always a little bit of time lapse when you do things live, so we're not going to worry about that. We're just delighted to launch our exhibition, and so that you can have the freedom at any time you like to go into our exhibition, connect with it, and also use these models in your own time. So here we go. I think we'll just show you going into the curing yard because it is quite a nice thing to do. So we'll slow it up a bit now. We'll take it quite slow from here, Ian, and we'll just go into the curing yard, and hopefully you'll see the activity that is taking place in the curing yard. So we're heading in, and they'll turn around. So there's the girls. Oh my goodness, there they are.
This is Jacquie's triumphant moment.
Yeah, way. And a big call out, Alan, to the student at St Andrews who did the animation as well. To tell us who that was.
That was Lucy Hardy. It was her summer project last semester, and so she spent most of the summer working on creating these characters and the animations that you can see now. And also there's some out the front as well, going along the seafront and the harbour. So that's
so
very
this
nice.
is the first time ever that we're actually seeing herring gutting done in virtual world animation. So we're quite proud of that. And the cooper as well. So the cooper that's banging on the barrels, putting the iron hoops onto the barrels and putting the lids on after all the fish have been gutted and packed into the barrels. That is another part of the animation we put into the film, just to bring the social history of the film more to life.
Yeah, and there's noise, isn't there, Jacquie? So it really does come to, like, you've got the wet gutting noises.
That's right. So when you go into it, there is the versions of the films in the Real Rights exhibitions are all narrated, and they take you on a journey. But in the near future, we'll be doing live events with each of these models so we can explore them in a bit more detail. But I think that's probably enough I think that's quite a lot for people to get their head around. We've done
quite a lot. I mean, that was the sort of purpose of the exhibition, to give you many sort of angles into
absolutely
the history of our parish. So I think, Alan, are there any questions?
There have been a lot of positive comments. Anne Young says, "This is an amazing launch. Thank you all." Ray Harrison is holed up in
Jacquie.
Ray Harrison says hi, and he is holed up in Tenerife apparently. So not a bad place to do your lockdown, I would say. And this has been shared of quite a lot of different groups in different places. So we've got a hello from Sue Johnston, Alan McIver, Mary Johnston says fantastic. Mary Johnston, loving the integration of all these disciplines in something so accessible. It's a breath of fresh air. Sue Johnston saying, good to see you here, Mary. It's just brilliant. Mary Johnston, it is. So more of a sort of running commentary, really. Yeah. Hello from Wick, very interesting. Looking forward to viewing the exhibit. That's Elizabeth Rintoul. Alan McIver, well done, great stuff. So yeah, I mean, I have asked, are there any questions? But Rob Aitken, I'm sure that's just a coincidence. It shares the same name as you, so he was looking forward to the show, and now he's had the show. Carolyn Seymour said hi. So yeah.
Okay, Alan, if there aren't any questions.
Sorry, no, there weren't any questions.
Just again to reiterate, because Jacquie's working in this, of course, with St Andrews as well. For it's nearly coming to an end with Cine, so for 3 years. I sound like a proud mother. Anyway, it's Jacquie's sort of victory and triumph, and it's an awful lot of hard work.
Here's a question.
Eloise Schultz.
I love the aesthetics of the virtual exhibit. Can you tell us about what guided the town?
Ah, well, that's a good
What
one.
guided the design, sorry.
Yeah. Oh, well, the design. Well, maybe I can answer part of that, and then so really, the Helmsdale reconstruction is really based around archival information, but also a lot of the plots and these buildings are still there, so we can get accurate measurements, and the way the buildings look, they still kind of look this way. So we've got a good real visual representation. We can walk around the village and we can see what it looks like. But when you also have, we have amazing archival photographs, which you can see in the exhibition, showing Helmsdale Harbour in around 1890, and it shows all the buildings before they were knocked down on Shore Street. So we can get a real good picture through the archival photos of what this model should look like. And we're kind of adding all that information together. Obviously, we look at comparative images from other places, but mostly we rely on the evidence that we can obtain to try and build up as accurate a picture as possible. But with a little bit of experience as well, we've realized, Alan, it's really important to get the textures and tones right and not to make it too clean and crisp.
Jacquie, should we talk a little? I think they were also asking about the exhibition design.
Oh, sorry.
Our good style. So that really was a sort of translation of what was going to be in real life, just into a digital space. And we wanted it sort of clean and bold and accessible. And we've also got our superstar Laurie, who translates our ideas. So Jacquie and I, we've got style, but Laurie sort of translated that into beautiful imagery. And of course, we're using the William Morris wallpaper prints as well.
Yeah, what I love about even in the last week, we've had more of an opportunity to even ourselves work, actually work and interact with the exhibition online. And I found it very intuitive. And what I love about it is that I find it a very good, a good research resource. And it's also something that will really encourage people to have lots of discussions as well, and actually look for this information that's out there that is accessible. We're giving you a little portal to these really important themes that we need to be exploring, and this is something that we're very it's very much a part of our work and our research in the coming years. So it's really important for us. So,
yeah, and lots of disciplines and lots of systems of knowledges as well.
Absolutely. So I don't know, should we
just say thank you for the crowd, the faceless crowd?
Well, the Nicola Henderson says, well done, guys, really fascinating. So maybe that's the last comment we take from the...
Thanks, Nicola.
And I would just like, just before we go, is just to thank the team at St Andrews for all your support and for running all these events, and there's lots more to come with us on it as well. And I'd also like to thank the Timespan team and everybody that supports Timespan, and especially the lady that's learnt me a huge amount is our director, Sadie Young. So thank you very much.
All right,
well done, Sadie. So I think that Ian, are we finishing or?
Ian, you're muted.